Refugees held by Australia in Papua New Guinea, PNG, have barricaded themselves inside a detention centre and launched legal action to fight its closure. Detainees, fearing for their safety after crowds reportedly gathered chanting "Don't come out," argue that closure will breach their human rights. Australia holds asylum seekers arriving by boat in camps on PNG's Manus Island and the small Pacific nation of Nauru. The Manus Island Centre is due to close after it was ruled unconstitutional. However, many of those in the camp argue that its closure, ordered by a PNG court and initially scheduled for Tuesday, will deny them access to water, electricity and security. The local authorities said these provisions would cease at 1700 hours local time, 7 o'clock GMT, and that PNG defense authorities could enter the centre as early as Wednesday. Refugees told the BBC that detainees planned to protest peacefully and had begun stockpiling water and dry biscuits, as well as setting up makeshift catchments for rainwater. They claimed that local residents began looting the compound on Tuesday after security guards left. Under a controversial policy, Australia refuses to take in anyone trying to reach its territories unofficially by boat. They are all intercepted and held in the Nauru and Manus Island detention centres. Why don't refugees want to leave? About 600 men have been told to leave the camp, but many have reportedly barricaded themselves inside due to fears for their safety if transferred to temporary accommodation in the Manus Island community. The news has raised concerns of a possible siege at the facility. Navy and police are heavily armed, but we don't know who they want to go to war with, locals or refugees. "So scary," tweeted Manus detainee Behruz Bichani. Mr. Bichani added that angry locals were protesting in front of the camp chanting "Don't come out." Last week, Human Rights Watch warned that the group could face unchecked violence by local people who had attacked them in the past, sometimes with machetes and rocks. Where would they go? Canberra has consistently ruled out transferring the men to Australia, arguing it would encourage human trafficking and lead to deaths at sea. However, PNG has said it is Australia's responsibility to provide ongoing support for the detainees. The Australian government says PNG is responsible for them. The refugees can permanently resettle in PNG, apply to live in Cambodia, or request to transfer to Nauru, but advocates say few have taken up these options. Some men already in the temporary accommodation were comfortably accessing services and supports there, Australia's Department for Immigration and Border Protection said on Tuesday. A separate resettlement deal struck with the Obama administration in 2016 saw the U.S. agree to take up to 1,250 refugees from the PNG and Nauru centers. Last month, a group of about 50 people from the detention centers became the first to be accepted by the U.S. under the agreement. The agreement, which is being administered under the United Nations Refugee Agency (UNHCR), is prioritizing women, children, and families and other refugees found to be the most vulnerable. However, the U.S. has not given an estimate of how long the application process will take, and it is not obliged to accept all of them. How will the closure affect detainees? Greg Barnes, a lawyer assisting with the legal action, said the closure would breach rights enshrined in PNG's constitution. The men are vulnerable to attacks and physical harm, so we are seeking to ensure their constitutional rights are not breached, and there is a resumption of the basic necessities of life, he told the BBC. The men have been dumped on the street, literally. What is going on is unlawful. The application also seeks to prevent the forcible removal of the men to an alternative centre on the island, and calls for them to be transferred to Australia or a safe third country. Australia's Guantanamo. Australia first opened Manus Island Centre in 2001. It was closed in 2008 and reopened in 2012. 6 asylum seekers have died since 2013, including Iranian man Reza Barati, who was murdered during a riot. Earlier this year, the government offered compensation totaling $70 million, £41 million, $53 million, to asylum seekers and refugees detained on Manus Island who alleged they had suffered harm while there. The lawsuit alleged that detainees had been housed in inhumane conditions below Australian standards, given inadequate medical treatment and exposed to systemic abuse and violence. The government called the financial settlement prudent, but denied wrongdoing.